You said it. Let's rock and roll.
You said it. It's June 18th, the year. It's still 2024. Welcome, everybody. You're listening to Crushing the Iron podcast, and this is episode 777.
777.
I don't know why, but it feels like a big number. 777. Happy to be there. Happy to be here. It's a wonderful Tuesday. It's sunny and windy here in Overland Park, Kansas, and from what I hear, it's pretty much hot everywhere. It's been hot. A little cooler on the racing weekend front this last weekend. Still a lot going on. Had a bunch of races the previous weekend, and you got more coming up this weekend. I think Coeur d'Alene, Mont Tremblant, a lot of great things happening. So again, happy to be here today. I hope you're all doing fantastic as we have crested past the middle of June. To all the fathers out there, hope you had a fantastic Father's Day on Sunday and got to do some things with family and or not. Maybe headed out and got a run or a ride in. Space is never a bad thing. But again, it's good to be back. Happy to be here. If it's your first time tuning in today, welcome. We appreciate you giving us your time. We know you have quite a lot of options in the Triathlon podcast universe and just podcasts in general. Time is very valuable, so we appreciate you tuning in today. We cover it all. We do swim, bike, and run specific podcasts. We do race recaps and also a lot of race previews. But for the most part, Mike and I, as coaches, athletes, best friends, we just sit back, relax, have an open, honest discussion about what we're going through in life, not just as human beings, but also as coaches and athletes ourselves. Mike and I also talk frequently about what our own athletes are going through. He and I work with a wide range of athletes all across the globe, from beginner level athletes looking the very first 5K or sprint triathlon, all the way up through elite level amateurs trying to get back to world championships and everyone in between from all over the globe. We use the feedback loop we have with them and Training Peaks emails, text messages, and like to drive the discussion today. We also like to utilize our Facebook group, and you can search that Crushing Iron Group. Answer multiple question. We'll let you right in. Awesome people, fantastic community, solid resource in a sport that is oftentimes way too complicated and way too confusing. It is a safe, solid, actionable space to get great information from seasoned veterans who have been around the block, a lot like Mike and I have, and are there to answer some of your questions and hopefully allow you to avoid some of the pitfalls and mistakes we made along the way. We also like to do a little bit of Q&A session in there, so you can pop in there and when we post those and ask questions, we do our best to answer those on the podcast as best we can in a timely manner. But that is it. We have no sponsors and we have no ads, but we do have an agenda, and that's to keep you happy and healthy in your endurance sports journey.
Yeah, 777. That's almost 8 years of twice a week-ish, mostly twice a week.
It's a lot.
Volunteering our time twice a week to come on and talk about triathlon and be friends with everybody.
Yeah, well, and I would have to say, I think the last 2 to 3 months, we've gotten a lot of, honestly, saying just a big thank you to our listeners. We've gotten a lot of really great feedback about the last few podcasts and thank you emails and notes or messages and stuff like that. So thank you to people that do that. I think, again, we do this, because we love it and we like chatting for 2 hours a week and have done so. And, I think but it's definitely nice to hear from people, and always great to hear that, our conversations make a difference. Cause that's kind of the goal and the hope of the podcast. And while we've kept doing it, it's 8 years. That's definitely sounds like a long time. Sometimes when I look at Hayden, he's like my barometer for how long we've been doing this. 'Cause pretty much started it when he was, a couple of weeks after he was born. And I'm like, God, you're going somewhere. I'm like, man, looking back, his birthday's next month and he'll be 8. He's going into 3rd grade. And I just look back at him, like, God, you were this is how long we've been doing this. And it really is a long, but very cool time to just look back and talk through things. I think I was telling you the other day off air, had an athlete reach out and was like, how's Tennessee? And I was like, wow, I think he was on episode 70. And I was like, you got a little bit of catching up to do. A lot's happened since then. But it's very cool. And it's our way of, saying thank you to the sport, but also, keep it connected and in touch with the listeners. So again, thank you for all those, the great feedback that we get. But yeah, something that we love doing. And I thought, we originally talked before we went live today, I was going to talk about the heat, because I think reading through Training Peaks this morning, that was the most common response I got was over the weekend. It was just hot. It was hot. I mean, it was so hot. Like I went to Minnesota for the weekend for a clinic for Hayden. I'm thinking, all right, man, hoodies, shorts. That's it. It's still early June in Minnesota. Surely I'm going to be rocking something like remotely, semi-fall weather. Nope. Heat advisory. It's just hot. So originally, I was thinking we would talk about, ways to adapt to the heat, things to do or not do, like not looking at your GPS watch, not obsessing about pace, visualizing, especially for runners, right? If you're a runner right now, I've got athletes that are working on like fall marathons. Like to me, I honestly see it as like the best time to train because you're not overly obsessed about pace and you just know that getting out and getting your runs in and high dew point, high humidity, high heat is going to just reap massive benefits. And you only have to worry about getting the work done instead of, obsessing about metrics and fitness and where my pace is. Kind of allows you that time to disconnect. But then I was also thinking kind of like, as we were just talking through the open about, because that topic is about adapting, right, to the heat, and I thought it'd be a good topic maybe to talk about adapting in general, because adapting to the heat is just same thing as adapting to an obstacle or a stressful situation. You and I both work with tons of athletes, again, from beginners who are looking at their very first sprint or coming back from a long layoff or coming back from injury, all the way up through, podium athletes and big races like 70.3s and fulls. And without fail, every year, and not for every athlete, but for a lot of athletes, like you go through a period where adapting to the life situation is critical. Whether you're coming off, some kind of a niggle and you can't run for a period of time, or I find this a lot this time of year. Athletes are riding their bike a ton and don't have the right saddle or the right, bike shorts, and they get saddle sores and they can't ride for a bit, or pool's closed for maintenance for 2 months, or my membership's expiring. I'm too far out to get to the pool, or I'm a lot of athletes are not time crunched. What's a great way to put this? I would call it fitness crunched, right? Like you sign up for a race, it's probably a 7.3 or a full. You really understand that you maybe haven't been as consistent as you want to be. So, right now you're on project finish, right? You're on project 17, which is to make the cutoff. And that takes just like a higher level of adapting, right? And being creative. And I think especially as athletes, right? In triathlon, we talked about this last week, I think the week before, was, a lot of people have geared towards like that 7-day, 7-day a week thing. And it doesn't have to be that way. You have to adapt. You have to, go maybe even whittle down to 4 or 5 day, right? You have to be able to be creative. And again, like I talked about that as an issue with, traditional training plans. You all work off 7-day schedules, Monday through Friday, 9 to 5. That's how they're all created. Monday through Friday, 9 to 5, long ride on Saturday and long run on Sunday. That's just how the plans are made, boom, print, send out, and then you also have that same thing with, how some coaches work. Like you can't adapt, you can't change things. And that's why, I think it's so fun, right? As coaches that, you and I, we talk about this a lot with other athletes that might have certain scenarios or circumstances that are different. It's like, how can we, the fun to me part is about training an athlete and coaching them is kind of when you have a hiccup, right? You have kind of a problem that needs to be solved, right? And don't get me wrong, it's perfectly fine to never have anything go wrong and always be getting faster and, life be perfect. Like that's awesome. But the truth is it really happens. It rarely ever happens. And so, rides on, long rides on Wednesday and long runs on Saturday or maybe, double bike rides on the weekend or, only swims on the weekend because I can't go to the pool Monday through Friday or, little difference like that. It's fun as a coach, right? To be creative and adapt and I'll just start off with kind of giving an example. We'll just kind of move on through on ways to adapt, because I just think it's really important for athletes, especially this time of year. We're middle of June, race season is here, fulls are coming, 70.3 calendar is loaded, locked and loaded as always, and people are behind. Right? Some people are behind. Some people are battling through niggles and injuries. Like we had an athlete in Korea last night about an athlete who's got Achilles issues, and they're on a training plan and it doesn't really adapt to that, and they're getting kind of close to crunch time, for a race. And then you've got athletes like, the one I kind of commented with this morning is I just kind of made the decision. I just said, hey, listen, like they're doing like they're doing a lot of races, and I said, from here on out, right, you need to. Every single run we do, every run needs to be on the treadmill. I know and they live in beautiful SoCal, like running outside is great. And I just said, we need to do on the treadmill. One, we need to remove the extra pounding, right? Because we are in, I don't want to say we're in Project 17, but we're not far off. And again, like, making it off the bike by the cutoff. If you do that, I don't know what the stats are, but I would say if you make it off the bike with the cutoff, you have a 99% chance of finishing. It's making the bike cutoff that people struggle with. And so I just said, what we need to do is every run now is the treadmill. And I want you to run for 4 minutes at 0.5% incline, and then and then walk for 2 minutes on 4% incline. Because the reality of the situation is, one, you're not likely, right, to walk, or so you're not likely to run the entire marathon. So we don't need you to actually run the entire time in training, because that might make your legs too fatigued. You might not be able to perform as well in your next ride and your next swim. But right now, riding and swimming are paramount. We want you the best fitness possible. We can do it more. It's also lower impact. You can recover quicker. And we're still getting the strength, but we're lowering that. We're still getting aerobic work. Like, that's a quick, easy way to lessen someone load and be adapt. Another great way is like something that we've always done. I think you and I started doing this 6-7 years ago, was implementing like the double ride weekend, right? Like, scooching over a long run on a Sunday to a Wednesday, Wednesday morning. A lot of people, if you think about it, and it's funny, if you don't call it a long run, people probably wouldn't think about it as a long run. You slide in an hour and 30-minute run on a Wednesday morning. Well, if you go to the pool and swim for an hour, it's going to take you 2 hours. Got to transport there. Get ready in the locker room, find your lane. Instead you can run from the house, be an hour and a half, save time, and then the PM maybe sneak in like a PM run. Like, again, double runs. Another way to be creative, right, in your training, instead of like slogging your way through these ridiculous, 2.5, 3.5 hour runs that a lot of these training plans make you do that you're totally not prepared for. Drop in some double runs, drop in some triples, like that's something that, I've seen dropped in before, and I've dropped in a few times, is, 30-minute run in the morning, 30-minute, 35, 40-minute over lunch, and then 20, 35-minute in the evening. Dropping in 3 runs, and you're not going to be tired the next day. So spreading things out. Double runs are a good way. Double rides, again, going back to that, is like you drop that in on the weekend, and you're utilizing the most amount of your time, right? So I think adapting is something that triathletes generally struggle with, because they want everything to fit perfectly in a life that is they're not in control of, and that's totally chaotic, and that they cannot plan for more than 48 hours in advance. And then even if they do, something comes up. So I just think adapting and being, and you're one of the most creative guys that I know in ways to make things better that aren't, I wouldn't say they're untraditional, but might not be in the first 2 or 3 things people use to triage to work around things. And that's something you've always been good at.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that. I think so. I've always sort of approached my training that way. If, I have a lot of, I work with some older athletes because I'm an older guy, and I think we have a lot in common. And sometimes, a 5-hour ride or a 6-hour ride, coming up it doesn't always work out. And instead of, maybe it's just 3 hours, and instead of just bagging it, get 3 today and get 2 tomorrow is what I tell them. And if you got a longer run, take a half hour off the run or something, and then maybe slide it into a little bit extra on Monday. Or if you got 3 swims, you can only hit 2. Just fucking, just go a little bit longer on those 2. Like those types of things for me are just commonplace. I mean, that's just how I work at it. I can't always hit a perfect week. I mean, I rarely, if ever, do. So yeah, I'm big on that. And, here I am. Speaking of adaptation, I'm 12 weeks out from Ironman Wisconsin. I've got a back issue. So I'm trying to make it work. I haven't really been able to run. I mean, I can run, but it hurts. It really irritates it. So I've just been adding, the biking seems to be okay with it. And actually, I think it's helping me heal. Actually, swimming motion is kind of a problem. So I've just been riding around on a sup board, like Laird Hamilton style, surfing the waves that I don't have, but just plugging along and trying to, it's like, I've been thinking of it really like a Zen trainer on the water, kind of thing, because really that's sort of what it is. And
we used to use it at our open water swim clinic in Nashville.
Yeah. What?
We used the paddleboard. We used to use that.
Oh yeah. We used to use it
as a way to teach people how to
stay wide, and
Exactly.
It's been interesting because like this whole injury has really forced me to think about the rest of my body, and I stop at nothing. In fact, I put it in my athlete email this week about don't give in. And I'm just obsessed with figuring out different things about, okay, I've got a back problem, so what am I going to do about it? And I learned a lot, and I've really been, a lot of times that can start in your hips, and your glutes are weak, all these sorts of things. So now it's given me an opportunity to work that. And I'm doing the supboarding thing has been interesting in a good way for my shoulder, that's always had a little bit of a twinge to it. So, I don't know. I'm looking for something to do and adapting in ways that I can. I'm trying to ride more. The run is going to be sketch, but as you said, you get off that bike feeling good, and you got one, there we are again with that one day, right?
Mm-hmm.
Who knows, man? We do.
Well, I mean, if we're being honest, most athletes, we've used the phrase a ton, like, 100% undertrained is better than 1% overtrained.
Yeah, but what do you need with that?
Well, yeah. What do you mean with that is, there's doing enough, right? And so I think there's a couple things that where athletes getting themselves in the way. And I remember Sebastian Kienle, when he won his first Ironman World Championship, he had a quote, and he said, if you feel, they were asking, how you feeling? Like he said, I feel underprepared, and I'm kind of anxious. But he also said, when it comes to Ironman training, if you feel confident about the distance, you're overtrained. And, there's to that end, when you talk, even for a lot of athletes too, it goes with 70.3s, like just the amount of fitness that you think you're trying to gain by trying, people use training to mask their insecurities, right? They don't think they're good enough. They don't think the training is good enough. They don't think they're going to be ready. So when they get that, they do more. And what happens is it usually just means you're going to have an inability to recover, right? But to the other end, and we talk about this a lot, is fitness is fitness. Yes, you have to be specific about your training. But if you cannot do something, right, then, and that's why I really try to, and I may not do a perfect job, but I really try to call the athletes that we work with athletes. Because I think what happens is when triathletes specifically get one taken away, they no longer feel as if they are a triathlete, they're training like a triathlete. But if I told you, hey, you can't run for 8 weeks, but you can swim and ride, a good amount. Well, the chances is you're going to be significantly faster and better and more fit when you can start running again. The truth of the matter is you may even be faster.
Yeah.
Running, right? Like you may even be faster. Right. So yes, there is specificity in all sports and in all, periodization. But again, a Tour de France rider or that rides their bike 14, 15 hours a week, they took the start line on a 5K or a 10K. You think they're going to start with the start line and they're going to have to walk because they don't run? Fuck no. They're probably going to win. Right? Because their aerobic system is getting all the work that it needs. It just needs a little bit of durability. Yes, is it going to be their best time ever? No, not at all. But it's going to be a lot better if they did nothing. And so, using the sup board, hopping on the elliptical, hopping on the rower, hopping on the, extra time on the bike, do work. And here's another thing. I'm going to try not to go off on a tangent. Stop being so fucking sedentary. I think in the last 2 months, I've given more athletes step goals than I ever had in my entire life. And I think that is a piece that we underestimate when it comes to getting better or having injuries or maybe not having the weight loss that we might want or feeling as fit. Or people grossly underestimate the aerobic benefits of brisk walking.
Oh my God.
And the amount of people, myself included, right, that now have jobs where you just sit. You just sit all day long. You sit. Because the longer you sit, the quicker your work gets done. The more you get up, the longer it takes. But then by the time you're done working, right, you're so drained, you don't really want to do that much at all. Right? So you just sit some more. So you could, and people struggle with this, right? I struggled with it mightily until I kind of figured out why I was, I wasn't, losing weight and leaning out. I could train 1.5 hours, 2 hours a day. But if the rest of my day is spent sitting, then I'm way behind. And then I go back and look at the days where I was right when I got out of treatment, I'm waiting tables. I'm on my feet all day long, walking around. I'll put miles and miles and miles and miles in, walking, always moving from the time I go to bed. Well, no wonder I was so lean. And now all we do is sit, right? Brisk walking, A, is harder than you think it is. And 2, is a great way to train aerobically. And honestly, you can, I don't promote run walking because you have a fear of getting injured. I don't believe in that because I think you're just never going to reach your full potential because you're just scared of maybe getting hurt. There are plenty of ways to ramp up in running by doing things, right, and doing it intelligently. I'm a huge fan of run walking and coming back from injuries or managing load for some people. But I'm also a gigantic fan of fast walking or getting your ass on a treadmill and doing incline walks. I've used that tons of times with great success on getting people faster and more durable, right? Put on a 3 or 4% incline. I mean, that's what rucking's gotten so huge because people are burning fat. They're putting these vests on, they're going out and walking for 45, 50 minutes. And the thing is you might see them and you're thinking, oh, they're just out walking. They're probably out walking for 1.5 hours when you just went out for a 30-minute run. Who do you think's getting the biggest benefit? the dude rucking it for 90 minutes. Right. I just think we overestimate specificity so much in that a run has to be a run for it to count and get points toward running. Same with cycling, same with swimming, is that there's so much crossover that the best thing you can do is to just look at volume. Right. So if I know an athlete is struggling with, some niggles here and there and they can't do this, we just look at overall movement volume. How much can we move today? Can we average 1.5 hours of movement a day? Right? Maybe it's 30 minutes swim, maybe it's 30-minute bike, maybe it's a 45-minute walk. Check. Maybe it's an hour walk and a 45-minute bike. Check. Maybe it's just a long swim. Check. Aerobic. If you can't, and that's the thing I think athletes have to realize, if you don't see yourself getting to the point of specificity, then stop worrying about it. And that's a giant issue with athletes. In order to get to the point of being very specific, what phase am I in? What phase am I in? Well, right now we're still in the phase of you being consistent. And until we can get through that, then there is no point being specific. Like Gordo Byrne, one of the, like, in my opinion, one of the godfathers of coaching and long distance racing, and the book Going Long. They work with Alan Couzens on a lot of books, and in the very first like coaching company I ever came across, Endurance Nation, like 13, 14 years ago. I've quoted him before on this podcast. He said 95% of all Ironman athletes should never run anything harder than tempo. And the rest, and most of that 95% shouldn't even run tempo. They should just run easy, because all you should do is it's too hard on your body and you're just accumulating mileage. But so many athletes, again, even in cycling, when am I going to do more VO2 max or threshold work and this? I'm like, first of all, you work. And then we put the icing on. Oh, it's boring. Oh, it's this. I'm like, if you get bored easily, again, you're in the wrong sport. Or maybe that's why you keep getting stale and not getting any better, right? It's because you keep changing everything every 6 weeks, right? If you ask yourself, and sometimes it's a hard question to ask, right? Because you might be the athlete that does base training for a long time, and then until you get consistent enough to move on to something to make you better, like it may be a different phase, right? And I just think athletes struggle they overvalue specificity when they can't get to the level to where it matters, right? We talk about building a cake and then putting the icing on, then putting the sprinkles on. And then a lot of athletes don't do any prep. They don't get the right ingredients. They don't go to the right grocery store. They don't have the oven on the right temp. They're not patient with it. And they end up, trying to throw a tablespoon of icing on a couple crumbs of cake, which is their base, and then wonder why it didn't hold up. Right. So if you're in that phase, and don't get me wrong, dude, that's perfectly fine. Perfectly fine to be that. Right. A lot of us are that way. It also gives you some freedom, right? To not obsess about, the specific intervals or raising your LT2 or raising your threshold or improving your CSS pace, because there's this magical, wonderful things that happen when you do just a shit ton of aerobic work. You get really, really, really healthy. You start to oxidize fat better. You generally feel better. You'll probably sleep better. Your blood work probably looks better. Your sleep, everything's better. You function better as a human because you can breathe better. That's why we do this anyway, right? But you got so many athletes who drive themselves in the ground trying to do track workouts or hopping in Swift races every other day because they think that's what makes them faster, and they haven't developed any other part of their system. And so if that is you, then recognize that. I mean, the first time I had to go through this was 13 years ago. Had an athlete who won an entry to Ironman New York. So if you're new to the sport, you probably never heard of it. Ironman had a downtown New York City had an Ironman, and he won an entry to it and had done a 70.3 about 6 weeks before. Took some time off and had 45 days to train. And I was like, oh, shit. I was like, we better get to work. we can do it. We're gonna be creative. We ran, I think, twice a week only, but we swam and biked a shit ton because all I knew was that all we need to do is get you off the bike. You're probably gonna have to walk some. So why are we doing speed intervals? Why are we doing speed intervals? Right? When you're gonna
mystery
be
right there to me.
Exactly, right? I know I joked about it after Ironman Wisconsin a few years ago when you saw all these people that were shelled after the bike ride and, hey, how those track workouts work for you? Build the base. And even then, do something, I'm also a huge fan, and we do this a ton. You and I both do with athletes, is like one of the most underestimated bricks is a long run followed by a bike on a Sunday. And if you are thinking about going out for 2.5 hours on a run and it's 95 degrees outside and you already know that's a stupid idea and you're going to be shelled for 3 days and you're not even going to get any better from it, do yourself a favor. Go out there, run an 1.5 hour zone 2 on rolling terrain, come back inside, hop on the trainer and ride for 2 hours. One, it's so much better for you than doing some idiotic 2.5 hour run. 2, you're going to be or whatever number I was on, you're going to feel so much better the next day. You won't even skip a beat. And you got in 3.5 hours of work instead of 2.5 hours of probably mostly walking, smoked, done, and you can't work out well for 2 days.
And you're defeated mentally.
One, you nailed it. And you're defeated mentally.
I'll never be able to do this.
Yeah. So, I mean, you have to be able to, and I was to the same end, like about the heat, like I was going back and forth, or not going back. I was commenting in Training Peaks with an athlete this morning in Texas, and they were talking about how, it brutally hot is right now. And I said, right now, listen, it's like, again, like if it's 95 degrees, 100 degrees, dew points high up, why are you even on the track? Why? Why? I mean, we post this all the time in our closed athlete page on Facebook. It's like, I should dig it up and find it again. Is like when the dew points at like, certain levels, like doing anything over zone 2 is not advised. And over like 74, it's like even being outside and working out is not advised, counterproductive. Right. And so I told this athlete, like, hey, like, if you got an hour and 45-minute run, go out and run outside for an hour and then head inside or in the next 45 on the treadmill. Just get it done, or vice versa, or split it up. Right. Again, like there's nothing wrong with being creative and getting the work done, but everyone obsesses so much about specificity that it's like, if you're to the level, then you won't even know it's being specific because you're just doing different training and you're being consistent and getting it done. But athletes who try to like leapfrog that part of that like critical parts of training, especially for like 70.3s and fulls, you got like plastic coming up, you got all the fulls coming up in the back half of the year. People are way behind in their training. They're trying to skip, they're working off a training plan who's got, base phases started in January, and you're the athlete's been like, I got all year, baby. I got plenty of time. Well, next thing you know, you're 20 pounds heavier, you're more out of shape, and all of a sudden your training plan calls for build phase and speed work. You got no business doing that. I mean, honestly, you probably don't need any. I'll tell you right now. Again, I agree with Gordo Byrne. Like most athletes for Ironman training, 95% of it should be zone 2, zone 3. Hills, that's about it. Big gear hills, that's about it. I was listening to an interview, I can't remember, was it last year, I think, with a high-level coach, and their athlete had just won a couple Ironman and placed well in Kona, and they said, look back and, tell me what your, last training said. And they didn't do any work above threshold the entire time. That's for a professional athlete. Just a lot of zone 2 work and a lot of threshold work. But you got age group athletes who train a third of that, who have, 100th of the base that they have, trying to go out and smash it every day and run out and doing, hill repeats on the steepest incline and VO2 max efforts, 6 days a week. And, they wonder why they're not getting any better. And I just think you have to have this really objective view, especially if you're self-coaching yourself. Is this right for me? Which is, again, like, this is why May, June, and July, we get a huge influx of inquiries because people want to purchase training plans, January, February, and March, and think they're going to be a good play and it's going to work out. And then they get just a little bit off, and then all of a sudden they're like, I don't even know where to go now. Like, what phase one should be in? Should I skip through this? Should I jump ahead? Should I try to catch up? Like, no, none of it. Like, you got to work on the stuff that you can work on, and by keeping it easy. And again, like when we go through extremes, you're opening, and that's like the more things you try to remove, right, or add, the less chance you have of being successful. And again, it's just movement is just so crucial with everyone. And I think it's, again, going back to walking on an incline. I mean, skip your brick run if it's insanely hot outside. Run on the treadmill. If you don't run on the treadmill, do that. If you're stagnant, you can't run, and you feel like you need to build some strength, then do a 1 hour, big gear work. Hop on the treadmill for an hour and do 5-minute fast walk, 5-minute walk on a 6% incline, and try to tell me that's easier than doing a super chill, zone 1, zone 2 run in 60, in 65-degree weather. No, it's going to work your posterior chain. It's going to work your glutes. You're going to engage things. You have to focus on posture. Hiking actually, makes you engage your core. Fact of matter is, if you're doing a full, or most people doing a 7.3 even, you're probably doing some walking. That's again, like there's so many ways to manipulate how a person gets the start line. Again, healthy and happy and in the best shot to give it a shot. Because again, yes, we're worried about how things go after the race, but really we just got to get you there healthy. And it takes some creativity. It takes an open mind. But again, like that's the fun of it. That is the fun of it, is making it creative and moving things around. And as a coach, like having like the freedom to, I like, both. Like I like challenges. Like I like something that's not mainstream, or like I got an athlete this year that's doing the Wisconsin double, the 70.3 on a Saturday and the full on a Sunday. I'm like, fuck yeah, let's do it. Never done it before. No clue. Done plenty of the, the ultra distance training, like the DECA, so it's a little bit similar. But like there's always fun stuff with that. And I think that's the thing, again, that athletes don't do enough of, which a lot of athletes in the last 2 to 3 years have picked up gravel racing or trails, or ultras or swim events. Like I think it's incredibly healthy for athletes to venture out into that, because I think what they realize is that they can get really, 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 really fit if you would just stop calling yourself a triathlete and just call yourself an athlete. We see it all the time. I had an athlete, I meant to post this, but I didn't because I'm terrible at social media, but I had an athlete do 100K, hard 100K, and there was 2 years in a row and did so much better this year, crushed their time from the year before. And you know what they credited their improvement to?
Running
wasn't
less.
Wasn't the track, wasn't more hill repeats, it wasn't some special running progression, it was swimming. We swam like we were doing a full Ironman. And he commented week after week, I'm just feeling really, really, really fit. It's whole body, right? And it has a lot of similarities to hiking, actually, which is what you're going to do a lot of in 100, right? And so again, like stop training like just a triathlete who's only allowed to ride their tri bike and only allowed to run and only allowed to swim in a pool, and start looking at yourself as an athlete, as an endurance athlete, as an athlete who's trying to get better and fitter. And when you do that, you think triathlon leaves you options with 3. Considering yourself an athlete leaves you options for 20 on how to get better and how to get faster. Because I'm telling you, the athletes that I work with that go back and forth between sports are some of the fittest athletes that I coach, because they become more well-rounded. And they don't think of it as just training for a triathlon. Think about it as just training to get better and fitter and more efficient and faster. And therefore, they are, right? I use Iona as an example all the time, who lives in Sweden, does like just basically stops doing triathlon for like 6 months out of the year. We just cross-country ski a ton. And every year she comes back for it, and every year we have the same conversation. I'm just really worried that I'm not going to be able to do well. I just feel so out of shape. Every year, PRs every triathlon when she takes 6 months off of triathlon. But she does so much cross-country skiing, long, like 100K, 200K cross-country events. And it's making her a better triathlete, because she's not a triathlete. She's an athlete. And I just think it's important, again, to have that mentality as a triathlete instead of, is because it allows you more options, right? Well, if I can't get on my tri bike, or I can't do this, it's like, plus it's just like, there's so many things to do out there, and training for life, right? Training to be able to be fit with the things that you do. It's a huge benefit. So again, it's a really hard mental shift for, I think, a lot of people.
Yeah, I want to go back to the it's hot and you're doing a long run and you're just like dying out there. I mean, I've just never, like, your form is going to shit. You're suffering the whole thing. You know, I'm just trying to think. I really don't think I've ever run longer than 2 hours before an Ironman in training. And granted, I have, my last 2 Ironman have sucked, but I had some, you know, pretty good success, but there was other things that were going on back then. You know, I like that you mentioned a great brick as a run and then get on the trainer afterwards. And I used to really, you know, with cycling, I think I cycled more than I thought I did back in the day, you know, even though I think that I'm going to try to up that this time. But one of the things I used to do all the time was, you know, even if it was a 45-minute run or something like that, I would go out. I would do it the other way just because I felt like I'd like to have my legs a little loose before I run. But I think either way. But I would take my mountain bike out. If I had a 45-minute run, I would take a mountain bike out for 35, 40 minutes and then come back in and run like 30. I would cut the run a little short, but for me, I always felt like my mountain bike, because I have the seat a little bit lower and I'd really just kind of focus on the pull up a lot more.
Mm-hmm.
And I always felt like mountain biking made me a faster runner when I used to ride a lot. And so I kind of try to engage, you know, more of the running muscle, but I would just go out and ride. And I wouldn't ride hard. I would just kind of, you know, I would sort of supplement a run and take a little time off the path. And the other thing I used to do is, as I used to get just loads of shit for, was rollerblading. I'd go out and just rollerblade like a half marathon at the lab a lot. And that shit is like, you can talk about it what you want, but like that shit was like busting up my hip flexors, man. You know, it was good stuff, man. I missed that. It was just a nice non-pounder, but you know, same kind of movements. And it helps the bike too. So I don't know, man. I've always been sort of like, let's do hybrid type things that feel good. I was talking earlier this year or over the winter about how I was really getting into the treadmill incline and a little bit of weight on me. And just like, I told somebody at February Run Camp, I think it was Chad, but I said, look, I'm thinking about training for Ironman with just walking incline. Mm-hmm. And I mean, because if I get that strength, I don't think I will, but I don't necessarily think I'm going to be out there running super long this year. I mean, I may be forced not to with this back thing, but I just, you know, like you said, man, you got to get off the bike, and you got to get off the bike in a spot to run. And, you know, I've just seen it. I mean, from the, you know, people who will swim 130s in the hundreds in the pool and then be like 205 or 210 in the open water. I mean, there's just reality, man, going on here. You're going to get off that bike and think you're going to run, you know, your hour marathon pace kind of workout on the Ironman course. I don't know. You got to be strong, and you got to just be able to get off that bike actually having a chance, or you're going to be in a death march. And if you're going to do that, you know, in training, you might as well save it for race day. That's the way I look at it.
No, I mean, you nailed it. I mean, I think that's a perfect place to wrap it up. Is like, I know last year I had an athlete that PR'd their full distance. They were coming off a run injury. So I think the last 8 weeks leading up to their Ironman, we did 4 swims a week, 5 bikes a week, and 2 runs. And we never ran over an hour and 15. And the quote unquote run in the middle of the week was an hour and 15 minutes on the treadmill, 10 minutes zone 2, 5 minutes, at 6 minutes hike. And the first time I did, they were like, is this a joke? Like, this looks way too easy.
Mm-hmm.
And then they didn't finish the first workout. I had to scale it back because they were like, I'm shredded from the hiking. But the quads and the calves and the hamstring, it works everything. And there's way too much. There's way too many ways to be successful. And the problem with triathletes is that there's a billion ways to be successful and be creative. But most triathletes look at the sport and training as in like, there's one way.
Yeah.
Has to be done this way. Has to be done this way. I can't do it. I'm not like, and that's just not true.
Well, most people,
it's the creativity.
I really, most of the people I think that struggle in this sport or, wind up like, regretful about, like, I think it's because they're, like you're saying, they're just one way and they're probably mostly hanging out in the gray zone.
Mm-hmm.
They're doing things in a way that wear them down. It's like you said, the zone 1, zone 2 stuff is great for your health. And the more the more time you spend there, the better. And if you're kind of always creeping into the wrong space, you're going to be tired and your body's going to be beat up, and it goes on and on and on. I mean, that's the one thing. I mean, if we can be real here, we've seen so many triathletes just burn out. And I think that's really at the core of it. That and the adaptation that we're talking about today is just, can you make some, tweaks in what's going on? And it doesn't always have to, like, I'm averse to being absolutely shelled after workouts. I just don't like it.
Mm-hmm.
I like to feel good, feel like I pushed it a little bit. And, but constantly being shelled is no way to go through life.
Nope. And people are finding out the hard way right now, where they're going out for runs and rides, and it's all of a sudden it's super hot in the dew point, and they're like, oh shit, not only am I not making room for this extra environmental stress, but I'm going harder because I'm now closer to race day, so I'm doubling the stress. Hotter and harder. And that's why people get burnt out. And because I wouldn't feel fitter either if I was going out there and bashing my head against the wall 4 days a week, underfueled, overtrained, and trying to go too hard.
Yeah.
No way to train, baby. No way to train.
And I don't know about you, man, but I am always surprised that when summer comes, it gets hot.
Right.
It just comes out of nowhere and really, I'm like, what happened? It's hot out here.
Yeah, every year, man. Just like the winter.
I mean, it's just,
honestly, it's my favorite. Well,
I love it.
Times here to run are when it's super cold, because I just love the way it feels, and also when it's super hot, because it makes everything on my watch irrelevant.
Yeah.
I just go out there like this morning. Went out there, dew point was high, humidity was high, it was super windy. I didn't take any music. I just went out there and ran, listened to my breath, and I was like, I'm getting better right now just by the fact that I'm running super easing in these really shitty conditions.
Yeah.
And that's super freeing, no matter what level you are. But it's very hard for athletes to reconcile that, I think. So come on, athletes, reconcile it. Be creative with things. And honestly, if you can't, find somebody that can help you. I mean, I mentioned this briefly, and then we'll close out in a post I did in our Crushing Iron group. Is like, I get it. Like, training plans seem great and they look great on paper, and they're maybe a little bit more friendly on the wallet, but buying a training plan that doesn't fit your life is like purchasing a refrigerator you really, really want, only to bring it home and figure out it doesn't fit the cutout in your kitchen. And you're stuck with it. Yeah, you can take it back, but I mean, who wants to be that guy and take it back? So if you find yourself in those situations, right, and you need some creativity, you need some flexibility, you need, you need to be Gumby. You need to be flexible, like we said, flexible in the fuck around, and figure out a way to make it happen because you can't, or you can't, or you've never had an injury or a work thing or whatever. Reach out to us. Go to our website, c26triathlon.com. It's our first stop shop for all things coaching, camps, and community. If you need anything from Mike, he is available. Mike at c26triathlon.com. If you need anything from me, I'm available. Robbie at c26triathlon.com.
All right. I guess that wraps it up.
Yeah, I'm going to go outside and walk backwards for 2 hours.
That's what I'm talking about right there. I bring that shit up sometimes. Like, yeah, that's funny you brought that up with the treadmill. Oh, you're kidding, right? This is not a workout. Yes, it is.
Yes, it is. Try it and then get back to me.
I'm reading this crazy book about movement right now. The bear crawl and, just different shit, Like, we go straight ahead, man. We got to mix it up a little bit.
If you
big backwards walker.
If you want to be reminded about how you need to move more in different directions, go landscape for 2 hours and come back to us.
Exactly.
Shredded. I mean, totally shredded after 2 hours of landscaping.
Oh, yeah. It's always in Training Peaks, too.
It is. You got to put it in. You got to put it in. All right, guys. We love you. We appreciate you. We'll see you on Thursday.
All right, man. See you.
You dude.